The fear in Jian Fan's eyes hadn't dissipated even after his death and was clearly visible for everyone as they looked at his corpse that laid stiff on the ground. What manner of death could have evoked such expression from a monster who roamed the continent unhindered? How? Condor Jian Fan is actually dead. Who killed him? Long Jiu was unnerved and stammered. Zhuo Fan sneered, is there a need to ask when I was the one who took out his corpse? They all looked at Zhuo Fan with a stranger's eyes. Each guessed as such, but none dared to believe it. This monster had even escaped the Veiled Dragon Pavilion's 3 elders' joint attack. I knew that there was a deep grudge between him and Brogio. Since I chanced upon him, I killed him. Flicking off imaginary dust from himself, Zhuo Fan smiled. Brogio, please don't take offense for meddling in your affairs. How can I? Long Jiu panted and was staring at the corpse with bloodshot eyes. This monster ruined my eye and my future. I can hardly contain myself from drinking his blood and feasting on his flesh. How can I blame you for taking revenge in my stead? Brother Shua. Suddenly, Long Jiu cupped his hands. From this day forth, I shall treat you as a sworn brother. As long as you're in my domain, you just need to ask and I'll do it. Sai Brogio is too courteous. I barely did anything. Zhuo Fan dismissed him with a wave, but that little movement stirred his wound and winced. Long Jiu appeared next to him in a flash. Don't move, brother. Here are some recovery pills. In 3 days you'll be up and about. Long Jiu took out a few small bottles and placed them in Zhuo Fan's hand. With how caring Long Jiu was, the other elders stared at Zhuo Fan in amazement. Long Kuei pouted, feeling her heart dumped in vinegar. They just wiped out Hell Valley's men and earned great merit that even the 3 elders were overjoyed. Yet it paled in comparison with Zhuo Fan, who killed 2 of Hell Valley's elders. Humph, who knows what trick he pulled to get so lucky and snatch their heads. How could a chi condensation cultivator ever kill a profound heaven expert? Long Kuei muttered in jealousy, but everyone heard her. RD Elder glared but then shook his head. Yet Zhuo Fan laughed. It is true that it was by luck that I encountered the one-armed elder and got his head, bad luck in fact. Because I had just then killed a profound heaven expert and was out of yuan chi. But this also made him underestimate me. How else could I have killed the wounded elder Jian? If it were any other time, wouldn't the elder kill me with but a wave of his hand? Sigh, last night I had the worst luck. Unlike some people who only had to lead their men to ensure their safety, Zhuo Fan sighed as Long Kuei's face flushed red. You. Lei Yuting giggled. She was clear on what happened last night. Zhuo Fan was indeed amazing, forcing the elder to act as he wanted. But amazing as he was, such an instance wasn't going to repeat itself every time. Zhuo Fan said that just despite Long Kuei, I am better and stronger than you. My merit is also greater, all coming from one well-placed hit. While you can only yap your mouth. The 3 elders laughed as they shook their heads. They knew that Zhuo Fan succeeded in bringing down a profound heaven expert only through special means and not like how he bragged about, killing because he met him. But the fact remained, him killing 2 such experts in a single night shook the elders' core. Old Jiu, take care of Brother Zhuo's wound. We will also add a few hundred guards around the premises while I and Brother will report back to the estate. We must notify Pavilion Lord. Long Jiu nodded while Long Kuei and Long Jie froze. Why even 3rd elder is calling Zhuo Fan brother. Zhuo Fan adapted to the change on the spot. Bro San, Bro Wu, take care. Stumbling, 3rd and 5th elders shook their heads in dismay. Old Jiu was right, this kid's greatest talent is to read hearts. After they left, Long Jiu and the others helped Zhuo Fan back to his room. Long Jie and Long Kuei left to handle the additional security of the small courtyard. In bed, Zhuo Fan eased his breathing and asked, everyone leave, I have to talk with Bro Jiu alone. As the people left, Long Jiu was wondering what could Zhuo Fan want to know so urgently. Bro Jiu, I have a gift for you. Gift? Long Jiu only laughed. Brother, I'm not trying to discourage you, but the Luo clan hasn't got anything I could take interest in. Or is it that you have another ancient array? Zhuo Fan shook his head. In your dreams. That array alone is worth 10 million at the minimum. Do you think they're easy to come by? But I'm pretty sure you're going to like this gift. Zhuo Fan took out a bag. Frowning, Long Jiu didn't understand until Zhuo Fan opened the bag and a crow landed on his shoulder. Jian Fan's soul-devouring crow? Correct. Ever since that old guy died, this crow has been without an owner. I'm sure Bro Jiu wouldn't need long to turn it into your spirit animal, always there to protect you. Long Jiu's eyes began to glisten. The title of God Eye Long Jiu lost all its power ever since his eye was robbed. Now that he had the crow, it was as if he recovered his mystic eye. Brother, thank you for your kind intention. Long Joe's eye trembled from the heartfelt gratitude. Zhuo Fan continued, Brojo, there's just one thing I am unclear about. Since you trained one eye in purple lightning gold eye, why couldn't you do the same for the other? Sigh, brother, this mystic eye of mine was gained through a chance encounter. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Long Joe sighed, recalling his youth. This mystic eye wasn't cultivated through a cultivation method from Veiled Dragon Pavilion. It was something I found through luck. Long Joe considered Zhuo Fan as one of his closest friends. Thus, he became the first listener to the secret Long Joe had buried for such a long time. Brother, do you know of the 3 danger zones on this continent? After Zhuo Fan shook his head, Long Joe smiled. You can go anywhere you want across the continent, except for the 3 danger zones. Regardless of your strength, you'll find helpless against the dangers in there. Zhuo Fan nodded from how serious Long Joe looked but didn't take the warning to heart. The zones are Lightning Canyon, Ice Mountain and Fire Pit. Long Joe stared at Zhuo Fan in all seriousness, but then laughed in the end. Never mind. Even if you want to go, you still can't. Only if your luck is sky high will you enter one. Why? Because these zones appear at random. Today, they might be in the east and tomorrow in the west. Regardless of where they descend, it will cause a terrible tornado that draws in all who dared approach, while also trapping them inside. That must be an array which an expert had deployed. If one didn't know how the array operated, they would have no hope of finding the entrance. Zhuo Fan asked, then how did you get out? Long Joe nodded with a deep look. You're smart, brother. Yes, in my youth I chanced upon the Lightning Canyon. At that time, the tornado swept me away and all I could see was a world of purple lightning. Every single expert there fell under the purple strikes. Just recalling it sends shivers down my spine. Then the oddest thing happened. The strike that was meant for me hit in my eye. While I was unharmed, all that I could feel from my eye was scorching heat. Zhuo Fan now understood. As it was stated in the Nine Serenities Secret Records regarding the Heavenly Emperor's purple lightning gold eye, everything was subjected to be destroyed under its gaze, all except the eye. This was why when the purple lightning struck Long Joe's eye, he was unharmed. Perhaps because of my will to survive, I gave it my all in fighting for my life. I was aware of the purple lightning's power but still wanted to live. It was at that moment that a man's voice reached me. He was reciting some method and I, in my confused state, mimicked his words. It shocked me in the end when my eye released purple lightning. It may have been because of the eye that the purple lightning no longer struck me. Finally, when the tornado passed, only I survived. But ever since I was robbed of my eye and because of the frantic situation when I gained it, I no longer recalled the words that man recited and had no way of forming another mystic eye. Long Joe sighed while Zhuo Fan nodded. Lightning Canyon was a remnant the Heavenly Emperor left behind and contained his cultivation method. I have to find it. If I add the 9 Serenities Emperor's legacy with Heavenly Emperors, with 2 of the 3 Ancient Emperors' legacy in my hands, none can contest me? I didn't reincarnate in vain. No one would ever imagine that a powerful Emperor stage expert would leave his remnant in the mortal world. Ah? Zhuo Fan wanted to cackle but was sensible enough to refrain since Long Joe was next to him. Their talk took the entire day. Once Zhuo Fan got hold of all the information that interested him, he walked Long Joe out, after which he entered seclusion for a month to heal. With Long Joe's recovery pills, he was back to full health in 10 days but was forced to spend the remaining time to patch up Blood Infant's precarious state. A month later, Zhuo Fan came out of his room stretching his limbs and enjoying the fresh air. Moreover, just a few days ago, he and Blood Infant entered the 5th layer of chi condensation. Just that it was a pity one of the 2 elders from Hell Valley died for naught. He truly hoped he could absorb the elder's yuan qi at the time. With it, he'd be in the bone-tempering stage by now. Ah, steward Zhu. Xiao Chui shrieked in joy seeing him but then bolted. Zhuo Fan was stumped, feeling his face unconsciously. Did something change about me? Why did she run as soon as she saw me? What's so scary about me? I'm not a man-eating monster. But he soon had it all figured out. I must have been too rough on her when I ripped their clothes that time, and this girl is now afraid of me. The same as how Luo Yunhai was before. Zhuo Fan snickered. I was kinda too hard on both the kids. Brother Zhuo, are you feeling better? This time it was the uncouth Captain Pang. Old Pang. Captain Pang was the only one he admitted being his friend since he reincarnated. Zhuo Fan started to miss him after not seeing each other for a month. However, just as Captain Pang was about to give him a friendly hug, his face changed and away he ran. This time, Zhuo Fan was floored. Forget that lass, Xiao Chui, why is even old Pang avoiding me like a plague? Zhuo Fan frowned, unable to get to the bottom of it. He was expert in reading people's intentions in negotiations and fights, but that was because he was convinced every man's actions were motivated by benefit. Yet old Pang's behavior had him stumped. I've done nothing to hurt him and he shouldn't have a reason for being scared of me. Then what's the deal with him running away? Zhuo Fan shook his head in puzzlement, but he wasn't in the mood to find out the reason. A man such as Demonic Emperor was a man of great action, not bothered by petty affairs. When he was about to leave, Lei Yuding appeared in his sight with the lunchbox and Xiao Chui running behind her. Her cute body hid behind Lei Yuding, peeking her small head to gaze at Zhuo Fan. What are you up to? Zhuo Fan stood in place, puzzled. Lei Yuding walked with unsure steps, unlike the usual decisive nature she carried herself with. When she looked at Zhuo Fan, her cheeks were rosy. Steward Chua, thank you for saving me. Please accept this small token of appreciation. Zhuo Fan eyed the lunchbox with suspicion as he eased the lid open. A wonderful smell swept him when the intricately made dishes prepared from the heart were in the open. What a wonderful smell. Zhuo Fan asked, where did you buy them from? Did Wingay City have such a great restaurant? Humph, they weren't bought. Xiao Chui jumped out with a smile. Young Miss spent 10 hours each day making them and waited for Steward Zhuo to come out of seclusion to try them out. Every day? Zhuo Fan now unraveled the mystery of Xiao Chui running at the sight of him. It was to notify Lei Yuding. Not knowing when he'd come out, Lei Yuding cooked for him every day. Her perseverance moved him. Nodding, Zhuo Fan spoke, I accept your gift. Lei Yuding cupped her blushing face and whispered, Steward Zhuo just got well and needs to take care of his body. Hurry and eat before it gets cold. Right. Zhuo Fan returned to his room with the lunchbox. Even though he was in the qi condensation stage, not eating for a month made him hungry. Lei Yuding with Xiao Chui in tow followed him in. Her eyes shine like the sun, soft yet warm enough to melt a glacier. When Zhuo Fan was about to dig in, Luo Yinchang's charming figure entered the room with a knock. Captain Peng followed behind her. Quirking an eyebrow, Zhuo Fan saw her carrying a lunchbox too. Oh, I didn't know Steward Zhuo already had someone bringing him breakfast. I was worried for nothing. When she saw the lunchbox in front Zhuo Fan, Luo Yinchang's smile widened but her eyes became sharp as if they were about to poke holes into everyone present. What got her in such a foul mood this morning? Zhuo Fan flickered his brow in confusion. But when he picked up on Captain Peng's pitying glance, it got him baffled. Bam! Luo Yinchang slammed the box in front of Zhuo Fan while squeezing a smile. Steward Chua, this is something I made for you to help in your recovery. I already have a share. I'm not a glutton to eat so much. Zhuo Fan shrugged, planning on pushing aside Luo Yinchang's box, but then he sensed killing intent. He caught Luo Yinchang's eyes glaring at him. I'll try both of them. Zhuo Fan flinched for the first time in his life. He didn't understand what the fuss was about but knew that if he hadn't said that, there would have been a real danger to his life. Revealing Luo Yinchang's dishes, he found them scorched black, cutting most of his appetite. I think I'll eat this one. Zhuo Fan went for Lei Yuding's box as she showed a bright smile. But even before his hand reached it, Luo Yinchang bumped her box closer to him with a glare. Didn't you say you'll eat them both? Zhuo Fan's brow flickered, hesitation setting in as he took another long look at Luo Yinchang's burnt dishes. But he could hardly refuse her sincere eyes and nodded, all right, I'll eat them. Luo Yinchang broke out into a wide smile, to which Lei Yuding was showing disdain. Mine first. Luo Yinchang urged. No, Mine. Lei Yuding said in haste. The two women's eyes met and sparks seemed to fly. Zhuo Fan wondered, weren't they close? Why are they fighting all of a sudden? He couldn't comprehend what could bring such a change in them. First come, first served. Zhuo Fan then took a bite out of Lei Yuding's dishes. She was staring at him with wide and expectant eyes. Zhuo Fan gave a thumbs up, delicious. Lei Yuding's smile bloomed like a flower while Xiao Chui pushed out her chin and shouted, my young miss started cooking since she was 10. No one in Wingay City can match her skill. You are fortunate today, Steward Chua. Xiao Chui's boast embarrassed Lei Yuding, but even that couldn't take away the radiant smile from her face. Luo Yinchang pouted, Zhuo Fan, try mine. Zhuo Fan took a bite but spat it out as soon as it touched his tongue. Even poison is better. His words were sharp as he took Lei Yuding's box. I still choose this one. Lei Yuding was smiling while Luo Yinchang's eyes started tearing. Wow, such a great smell. At this time Luo Yinhai shouted in surprise as he jumped into Zhuo Fan's room. Bro Zhuo, you're out. And you are having such a feast, why didn't you invite me? Go and eat your sister's cooking. Zhuo Fan dissed him. Luo Yinhai complained, her skill isn't worth a dime. She doesn't know anything besides opening the kitchen door. Unable to stay there any longer, Luo Yunchang ran out with her lunch box. But people could see the droplets she left behind on the floor. Was I wrong? Luo Yunhai was confused. Not at all. Zhuo Fan gorged on Lei Yuding's cooking as he said, but some people have low confidence. After finishing his meal, Zhuo Fan informed the others before leaving, stay here as Hell Valley's people might still lurk around. I'm going to pay Veiled Dragon Pavilion a visit. Luo Yunhai and Captain Ping nodded, then turned to Lei Yuding. Seeing her all flushed, Xiao Chui was even more excited. How great, young miss, Steward Zhuo is interested in you. Lei Yuding only smiled. At the same time, in the Imperial City, in a magnificent office, two people sat side by side. One man was in his 40s, dressed in a white silken robe. He had a small hanging mustache that shook with his smile. The other man was in his 50s with a somber complexion and wearing a dark cloak. His pair of large eyes were filled with grievance. The two acted like strangers, not meeting each other's eyes. Cough, cough, cough. With a cough, a shaky body appeared before the two. It was an old man dressed in a golden robe embroidered with 9 dragons. Your Majesty. The men rose up and bowed. The elder waved for them to sit. Veiled Dragon Pavilion and Hell Valley both are from the 7 noble houses, the pillars of the empire. What matter has made you request an audience with me? This elder was the Emperor of Tianyu Empire. Your Majesty, Veiled Dragon Pavilion killed 2 of our Hell Valley's elders last month, breaking the 7 houses agreement. Your Majesty, please punish the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. The black-robed man complained. Sneering, the middle-aged man spoke. Yuanshan, you have some nerve complaining first. Your Hell Valley's elder infringed upon my Veiled Dragon Pavilion's domain. How are you going to explain it? Who is it that broke the 7 houses agreement first? One of my valley's disciple, Yu Quan, was killed in Wingay City. Can I send an elder to bring the matter to light? Yuanshan squinted. Along Yaifi, you are just making an excuse to exact revenge for what happened 2 decades ago. 20 years ago, you trapped Elder Zhou in Drifting Leaves City and ruined his mystic eye. You accused him of entering your domain and breaching the 7 houses agreement. I didn't object. This time, however, it is your elder who entered mine. And not just one, but 4. Is this what you call investigation? Enough. The Emperor's cold shout came as his eyes flashed in anger. Both sides are in violation. This is my judgment. Veiled Dragon Pavilion shall withdraw from Wingay City. It is no longer part of your domain. Hell Valley and Veiled Dragon Pavilion's people are never to set foot in this city ever again. Your Majesty. The two cupped their fists, but the Emperor flicked his sleeve. This matter is settled. Withdraw. I no longer want to hear anything about the 7 houses, nor about internal disputes. Understood. None of them was willing to accept this conclusion but retreated nonetheless. When they were gone, the Emperor's eyes flashed. For Hell Valley's people to enter Wingay City, they must be privy to the 1,000-year-old secret. The Imperial City has always been a place of conflict, filled with the eyes and ears of every faction. This should be known to your Majesty. An aged voice replied from behind. The Emperor chuckled. It seems the plan has begun. Pearls will always shine, he he he. Since the Veiled Dragon Pavilion's grand gate was but a few hundred steps away, Zhuo Fan chose to walk. However, he stopped before passing through it. In front of the gate was a yellow palanquin with 4 peak chi condensation cultivators as carriers and 16 bone tempering cultivators surrounding it. A fat figure in yellow stood in front of the palanquin. You could barely make out his pin-sized eyes from his bulging cheeks. At first glance, one would take him as having a bun in place of his head. Zhuo Fan shook his head. He'd seen his fair share of people, but this was his first encountering such a fatso. How can one get so fat? Zhuo Fan resumed his gait, glancing at the fatty from time to time. His appearance was far from attractive, but his 7th chi condensation cultivation and the large number of guards was nothing to scoff. If the fatty was from Veiled Dragon Pavilion, he'd have gone in by now. Wait! Zhuo Fan's entry was stopped by a sudden shout. Turning around, he caught the sight of Fatty's feet sinking into the ground with each step towards him. Zhuo Fan's cheeks started twitching. Do you need something? Hehehe, are you from Veiled Dragon Pavilion? The fatty smiled. It would have been better if he hadn't, as his eyes were now gone for good. Zhuo Fan was shocked by such a baffling appearance for a moment. I'm just a guest. That means you can also enter. The fatty showed a warm smile. Can I ask brother's help with a small matter? Please send word to young Miss Longkue. She hasn't come out for a whole day and I had to sleep outside. This weird fatty is pursuing Longkue. Zhuofan wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. Not when there were so many people around. To think that haughty Long Kui knows this fellow. Setting aside his status, his weight alone would make her awkward if someone caught them together. All right, I will tell her right away. Zhuofan struggled not to laugh as the fatty cupped his hands in gratitude. I'll leave it to brother. Zhuofan hastened his pace in fear of laughing if he spent one more moment with this guy. It wasn't worth it offending a great faction for such a reason. He soon arrived at the meeting room and met Long Kui. Miss Kui, long time no see. How have you been? Great, until you showed up. Long Kui snorted. Zhuofan didn't mind it. Oh, where's Brojio? I want to speak with him. Out. Long Kui rolled her eyes. Zhuofan read her face and found that she didn't lie. Since he didn't see Longjia either, it meant that he must be with Longjio on business. This would put a delay on the things he wanted to know. But he still had that fatty's message to deliver. To get that guy's gratitude and support, all I have to do is make this smug girl see him. What's the harm in passing the time while embarrassing this missy while I'm at it? Zhuofan showed a wide grin. What's with you? Long Kui frowned. Oh, nothing. There's a rich handsome guy outside who wants to talk to you. Hurry up and see him before he's gone. Hey Miss Long, who's he? Zhuofan elbowed her with raised eyebrows. Long Kui knew Zhuofan was making fun of her and got angry. Ignoring him, she walked to the gates with Zhuofan laughing behind her. Damn fatty, haven't I rejected your marriage proposal already? What are you still doing here? The fatty's smile fell. Sister Long Kui, that happened when I was 10. Now I'm 20. Don't you feel anything after I proposed 1,000 times these past 10 years? Of course I have, annoyance. Zhuofan butted in at this point, patting the fatty's shoulder as he looked at Long Kui. Miss Long Kui, such tender and strong love are rare these days. My dear friend is so smitten by you that he even slept outside waiting for you. The last words almost made Zhuofan burst in laughter. The fatty was so touched that the thick sarcasm flew right past him. Long Kui saw them working in unison, one explaining while the other agreeing, and felt her anger peaking. But for some reason she changed to a charming smile. Even Zhuofan blanked out from seeing her smile like this for the first time. And there was no need to mention the drooling fatty. Long Kui felt sick inside but still maintained her composure. Brother Tsong, you've always treated me so well ever since we were little. But my heart belongs to another. What, who's the punk? The fatty's face changed and his eyes spat fire. Zhuofan thought, oh. She isn't planning on dragging me into this, is she? Yet Long Kui turned to him with an enigmatic smile. Oh. Hell. Zhuofan didn't know which faction the fatty belonged to, but one thing was clear, he wasn't to be provoked. Zhuofan already had Hell Valley as his enemy, and messing with another faction just as strong, if not stronger, then even Demonic Emperor would have a hard time turning disaster into an opportunity. I was wondering why you were able to enter Veiled Dragon Pavilion like you own the place. It was because you and Long Kui are. The fatty grabbed Zhuofan's collar and glared. Zhuofan denied, brother, it's all just a misunderstanding. However, the fatty's eyes were red from anger and blinded to reason. There were two things any man would go berserk from, having his father killed and wife stolen. But the latter caused way more outrage than the former. Feeling as if he was wearing such a hat with no rhyme or reason turned this misunderstanding into a conflict. Zhuofan sighed, now I have to ask Longjio to explain in order to avoid offending another power. He was pondering on how to do it when he was floored by Fatty's next words. Sister Kui, what do you not like about me? Does this punk have something that I don't? Zhuofan almost spat blood, watching the fatty in a daze. Brother, now I know why you proposed 1,000 times. Cocky people he has seen aplenty, but this was Zhuofan's first time meeting one as oblivious about himself as this guy. Watching the fatty, who could burrow the earth just by standing, Zhuofan wanted to shout, brother, it's more like you pack something way extra than me. Even Long Kui was silently rolling her eyes. Brother Tsong, there must be some other reason for you to be here. You do not have the luxury of leaving the imperial capital as you wish. Take care of your matters and stop wasting time. That is out of the question. You are my future wife. I even applied for this task just to see you. Yet. Then the fatty glared at Zhuofan. Let's duel. He pointed at Zhuofan's nose as he raged. We will duel today to settle Sister Kuei's groom. Zhuofan took a closer look at the fatty, secretly admiring him. This kid is the first who didn't shout out his glorious clan's name before me. Just from this, Zhuofan liked him. Hearing the fatty request a duel, one of his guards stepped forward. Young master, your body is too precious to participate in duels. It's best if you let me handle him. Quiet. The fatty interrupted the guard. It is I who want to marry Sister Kue. My honor and dignity as a man are on the line. If you fight, I'll be mocked forever and Sister Kue will despise me even more. I will never ever approve of you. Long Kue rolled her eyes. Zhuo Fan agreed with a grin. Well said, I accept. However, all your guards are stronger than me and I can't take even a single hit from them if they interfere. If I say we will duel, then it will be one-on-one. My word is gold. You don't believe me. The fatty was even angrier now. Zhuo Fan shook his head. I do believe you. But if I defeat you, can they hold themselves from not jumping in? At that point, even if you order them not to, it won't do much good. It was unknown if the fatty was pondering or fuming since his eyes disappeared when he squinted. But then he barked at the guards, all of you stay put. If anyone has the nerve to move, I'll kill him. Then he turned to Zhuo Fan, pick a location where we won't be disturbed. Zhuo Fan smiled while Long Kue frowned and blocked him. You truly intend to fight? If he gets hurt, even Veiled Dragon Pavilion can't help you. He just nodded. This fatty isn't bad. Long Kue was stunned. When the fatty saw them stick together, his heart was aflame from rage. Panting with each word, he declared, Punk, you'll see. I will mop the floor with you. Zhuo Fan smiled, not minding it in the least. Zhuo Fan took the fatty to a remote place in the woods. Since Long Kue was afraid of mishaps, she also went along, but Zhuo Fan already had blood infant keep an eye out. At least the fatty's order worked like a charm and the guards stayed behind. Zhuo Fan clapped, A fatty, I praise you for not using the guards. Humph, I am always true to my word. This is related to me and Sister Kue's happy marriage. I will have to beat you, pesky puck, so thorough you can't contest my victory. Or who knows what excuse you'll use later to pester Sister Kue. The fatty jutted out his chin. Smiling, Zhuo Fan showed his vicious side. Aren't you worried I laid an ambush? The fatty frowned. His pin-sized eyes scoured his surroundings as he roared, A humph, I am willing to venture alone against any adversity, but if you think Sister Kue will look kindly to such a despicable punk, think again. No matter what you have in store, I will never lose. Ha ha ha, enough with the heroism. Kid, I like you. It's time we get this duel started. Zhuo Fan smiled. Yet even before he finished, a punch came his way. Zhuo Fan rushed to dodge, but he was too late to react. His body flew and his right cheek was now red and swollen. Hey fatso, I thought you were an honorable man. Zhuo Fan snapped at the nonchalant fatty who replied, Didn't you just give start to the duel? All is fair in love and war. Zhuo Fan took a long look at him and secretly nodded. This kid is more cunning than he lets on, yet he conducts himself with honor. He is as honest as Old Pang, but that is where the similarities end. Compared to the simple Old Pang, Zhuo Fan liked the shrewd fatty more. A demonic cultivator would use any means to reach his goal. This fatty, who bent the limits of morality, was more to Zhuo Fan's liking. Ah, you're right. Zhuo Fan cackled and pointed at Long Kue. Oh fatty, look, Long Kue is undressing. The fatty could spot a lie when he heard one, but he still bought it this time and turned towards Long Kue's direction. Bam! Zhuo Fan used this chance to kick the fatty into the air. Bastard! Long Kue fumed at the sightline with a red face, yet the culprit didn't mind it in the least when her glare focused on him. Wretched punk, you dared sully Sister Kue's honor. I will show you. The fatty wobbled as he got to his feet, but his eyes burned hotter than ever. Zhuo Fan dissed him. I was just messing around, yet you looked anyway. Weren't you also thinking something shameful about our young Miss Long? The fatty gasped. Never had he heard this kind of counter before. Zhuo Fan might have disrespected Long Kue, but didn't he himself sully his goddess by imagining something inappropriate? If so, did he have the right to blame Zhuo Fan? Fatty's resentment was gone just like that and he even felt ashamed. But once he imagined Long Kue changing clothes, his face went beet red. His small eyes were perfect in hiding his secret stare over Long Kue's enticing figure. But she found him out nonetheless and stared him down with killing intent. When a shiver crawled up his spine, the fatty focused on the fight. Punk, I will let this matter slide. Time to get serious. The fatty's body gave out a golden shine and even the ground started cracking around him. High mortal ranked martial art, mountain shaking punch. The fatty darted towards Zhuo Fan like a raging bull, cracking each and every stone he set his foot on. Punk, better dodge. But if you do, admit your loss. Grinning, Zhuo Fan extended a red palm, not intimidated in the least. The fatty raved, Damn punk, this will be your funeral. I am at the 7th layer of chi condensation and using a high-ranked martial art. This is not a move which a fifth-layer chi condensation punk can withstand. If you treasure your life, dodge. But Zhuofan didn't budge. The fatty didn't wish for the worst outcome and wanted to hold back some of his power, but it was too late now. His flabby body was already upon Zhuofan. Boom! Something strange happened. The weak-looking Zhuofan was still standing as a breeze ruffled his hair. The fatty, however, had his golden light scattered thanks to the red glow and was sent flying. He hit the ground in a daze, and even as he got up, he still couldn't shake his astonishment. How can this be? I am clearly stronger, so why was I the one who got pushed back? He needed a long time to recover from the shock. Long Kue scoffed. She didn't like Zhuofan one bit, but that didn't stop her from admiring his strength and ability. After all, he was the first on the continent to have killed 2 profound heaven expert while being a chi condensation cultivator. Arriving next to Fatty, Zhuofan offered his hand with a smile. Fatty, I know you went easy on me. The fatty sighed. A loss is a loss. Using all my power against someone weaker is the same as losing. I am an upright man. This is your win. Zhuofan turned serious. You might take it as being upright, but I see it as kindness. The fatty looked closer at Zhuofan. He was amazed this man found out his intention in that split second. I see now why Sister Kue likes you. The fatty praised him and took Zhuofan's hand. He went to Long Kue and sighed. Sister Kue, you found a great man. This punk will turn into a monster one day. The fatty felt dejected. But a sudden sound broke the silence. Zhuofan squinted his eyes and pushed the fatty to the ground. A green light passed above them the next second, cutting all the trees in its path. The fatty looked up at Zhuofan with gratitude. Brother, thank you for saving me. I never thought that my love rival will become my savior. It's too early for thanks. Here they come. Zhuofan frowned as he helped the fatty up. Long Kue also ran next to them. A dozen men appeared around the 3 of them the next moment, each giving off the energy of a bone-tempering expert. What now? Long Kue's expression was grave as she looked at Zhuofan. With the veiled dragon pavilion being even farther than the fatty's guards, the only one she could turn for help was the guy she disliked the most. But he was also the one most likely to pull off a miracle. The fatty strode out from between the 2 with confidence. It's me you're after. Let them go. Hi, as a member of the imperial family you sure have the air of a king. But too bad we can't leave any witnesses. A man stood out from the group. He was their leader. The fatty was filled with hatred. Suddenly, Zhuofan kicked the fatty with a snicker. This fatty is under my care. If you want to kill him, you'll have to go through me first. The dozen men laughed. A mere chi condensation insect wants to act tough? Since they'll all die anyway, let's start with him. It's best we kill the fatty first and complete the mission. It was hard enough finding this opportunity after waiting for so long. We can't let it go to waste. As they were rambling on and on, the fatty whispered to Zhuofan, Brother, they're after me. I will run towards east while you take Sister Kue back to Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Zhuofan shook his head. With your speed, you won't even last 1 second. What other choice do we have? Asked the fatty flustered. Zhuofan hardened his tone and said, Slaughter them all. He took a step and reached their leader as Savage Moon flashed in his hand. Demonic treasure? The leader was shocked and wanted to dodge, but a red light entered his body and froze his movements. Whoosh! With a silver flash, a head trailed the sky followed by a fountain of blood. Only Zhuofan stood in the pool of blood with cruel eyes. For the first time in Fatty's life, his eyes bulged out from his chubby face, becoming larger than ever. The silence was deafening. Everyone watched slack-jawed at the unfolding event. No one there could have imagined a chi condensation kid blindsiding them, who were bone-tempering experts, and even killing one in a single hit. All the mockery and disdain they had for Zhuofan was now replaced with extreme caution. Fatty was still out of it, staring at Zhuofan like his brain was on the fritz. It finally dawned upon him that it wasn't him who held back the most in their duel, but Zhuofan. Kill the punk first? With a sudden shout, the men charged at Zhuofan together. They were now of one mind, no longer of a different opinion. They had to kill this dreadful and sinister punk first. If they were to leave him for later, they were sure they'd have to pay a steep price, even if they outnumbered him. They had long forgotten their main objective and were now pointing their weapons at the punk who was holding Savage Moon and standing in a pool of blood. Smiling wryly, Zhuofan snickered. I wouldn't have it any other way. The next moment, he jumped at the first enemy. The man was startled and rushed to retreat. Even if Zhuofan was just in the chi condensation stage and unable to hurt him, the third-grade demonic treasure would cut through him like butter. Their leader got such a miserable death for underestimating Zhuo Fan, and he wasn't willing to make the same mistake. With eyes fixed on Savage Moon's trail, the killer grinned. He knew how to deal with Zhuo Fan. Since his speed was superior to Zhuo Fan, all he needed to do was pay attention to Savage Moon, and killing this kid would be a breeze. However, just as he was about to jump into action, Savage Moon flashed a silver glow. The light wrapped around Zhuo Fan and then streaked by the killer's body. The killer had no idea what happened and was looking up as his upper half slid to the ground while his lower half stood there unmoving. While he fell, he could still see Zhuo Fan's grim face. Especially the eyes, cold and unfeeling. Everyone sucked in a cold breath as they watched Zhuo Fan with dread. If one were to say that killing their leader was from a sneak attack, this time around it was a fair fight, and yet Zhuo Fan still killed a bone-tempering expert in an instant. When the silver light flashed again, he was so fast that none of the killers had time to react before Zhuo Fan felled another. Such horrifying speed coupled with the sharp edge of the Savage Moon soaked the backs of the killers in a cold sweat. As you dared to come look for trouble in my domain? Zhuo Fan squinted at each man around him and trailed a finger across his neck as his eyes turned red. Your lives are forfeited. At that moment, all of them paled and stepped back. The fear they felt from his eyes mounted the dread they already had. Their roles began to blur as it became unclear who was the victim and who was the killer. The hunter's and prey's role were now switched. The fatty watched Zhuo Fan's domineering gaze while being shell-shocked. Then he was swept by a sudden familiar feeling, the imposing and grand feeling he felt only from his father. But what he felt from Zhuo Fan was far more assertive. As if all who dared resist this man would find themselves dead beyond a shred of a doubt. The pressure Zhuo Fan's power released was something that even made him shiver. Seeing that they couldn't contend with Zhuo Fan individually, a killer shouted, "Don't be afraid, let's attack together. He's just a chi condensation punk relying on a third-grade demonic treasure. If we surround him, he's done for." The others nodded as fear eased from their faces. Now that they had a plan, they found hope. With a cry, the killers jumped at Zhuo Fan, closing the net on him. Sneering, Zhuo Fan rushed forward without fear as he held Savage Moon. His target swallowed dryly but didn't retreat since he had men on each side releasing punch at Zhuo Fan. If Zhuo Fan pressed on, the killer would die, but so would Zhuo Fan under the joint attack of two bone-tempering experts. But if he retreated instead, it would only work to tighten the net and his death would be just a matter of time. Zhuo Fan didn't plan on dying in this fight, or he would have fled a long time ago with the help of Savage Moon's speed boost. Whoosh! With a flash of silver, Zhuo Fan vanished from their sights and the punches hit nothing but air. Zhuo Fan then landed right in front of the killer who was standing behind the other two. Having not seen this coming, the killer was frightened but soon became elated seeing that Zhuo Fan was not facing him. He didn't waste this chance and punched towards Zhuo Fan's defenseless back. "Your head is mine, kid." But a silver light flashed by and the man froze. In the moment of impending doom, Zhuo Fan swept Savage Moon around him and jumped from their tight circle. As for the man behind Zhuo Fan, he watched wide-eyed as his body hit the ground in two pieces, blood and guts spilling everywhere. Another one. Even under their joint efforts, Zhuo Fan came out unscathed and robbed them of another comrade. Fear in their eyes mounted higher and higher. They had some hope before, wishing to kill him with numbers. But that hope was now lost. What kind of freak is he? When did the 7 noble houses have such a person? A killer cursed as he felt his knees trembling. Secretly sneering, Zhuo Fan squinted his eyes and bathed the world with the killing intent they contained. These killers were routed, they lost their nerve and were no longer a threat. Now was the perfect time to end them. Zhuo Fan rushed forth with a savage grin. Silver light flickered as Zhuo Fan brandished Savage Moon and sent limbs flying with each passing. The killers cried during their futile attempts to evade, having lost any and all will to resist. Zhuo Fan was like a wolf among sheep, taking his fill of slaughter and carnage. For the occasional spirited and still brave souls among them, Blood Infant would enter their body and seal their movements, thus priming them for Zhuo Fan, only to leave them mangled. If it was any other day, with Zhuo Fan's strength and Blood Infant's help, he could only fight with a single bone-tempering expert. If another joined, he'd have a hard time reacting to their attacks, let alone killing a dozen. But luck had it he got Savage Moon off Elder Yun, whom he killed a month ago. This gave him newfound confidence. Savage Moon was just as deadly as Blood Infant was on bone-tempering experts, perhaps even more. Especially when taking its ability to increase one's speed into consideration. And all of this was added to Zhuo Fan, who already had the skills to skip stages. Now that he thought about it, he really ought to thank Hell Valley for throwing such a nice toy in his lap. Hearing the bone-tempering expert's miserable wails, watching heads and entrails flying about, the fatty remained lifeless from shock. He stood there witnessing the gruesome dance Zhuo Fan was performing with Savage Moon. For these killers to cry and beg for their lives was something unheard of. He could hardly believe that the man he recognized as a love rival, the man he challenged, was strong to this degree. Recalling their duel, it seemed more like a joke now. The bone-tempering experts were butchered like animals in front of the fatty. A seventh-layered chi condensation cultivator dared to issue a challenge, and still was lenient with him while preaching fairness. Sai Yuan Song, your lenient act in fairness preaching was meaningless. The fatty shook his head, feeling mournful. He had seen many peers among the 7 houses who were geniuses, and even if he wasn't stronger than them, he believed their strength wasn't far from his. But Zhuo Fan showed him today what the saying a man above man and a sky above a sky meant. Those geniuses were nothing but trash by comparison. Furthermore, the gap was so huge at such a young age. Long Kuei covered her mouth, experiencing the greatest shock she ever felt. This was the first time she saw Zhuo Fan fighting. She had heard of him killing 2 profound heaven experts, but doubt still existed. This notion was far too outrageous for anyone to believe. But watching him fight today left this young miss stunned. The cruelty, the overbearing eyes, it was as if a demon had descended, one which was capable of scaring and overpowering even bone-tempering experts. Whoosh! When Zhuo Fan finally stopped, Savage Moon in his hand was dripping blood. The dry earth around him had become a wide pool of blood. A killer shivered as he watched the Savage Moons fall with dread. His legs were severed, but the pain wasn't registered as begging was all that was left on his mind. Not sparing him a glance, Zhuo Fan asked coldly, "Who sent you?" Zhuo Fan's eyes didn't reflect an ounce of pity towards any living creature in this world, only coldness. The killer looked around to see his dead brothers and fear swept his heart. He didn't know where to begin describing the savagery and cruelty of this youth before him. This youth was in all sense of the word a demon. The killer's heart was in shambles. It's. But a sudden whistling sound was heard and the killer's eyes lost its light. Killing with intent, a radiant stage expert. Zhuo Fan drew a cold breath. His bottomless and cold eyes now showed a ripple of panic. The whistling sound was heard clearly by everyone, but none could afford to slack their guard. On the contrary, each felt their heart in their throat. A radiant stage expert was able to kill with divine intent alone. This was an enemy Zhuo Fan wouldn't be able to defeat even with Blood Infant and Savage Moon. An icy shiver traveled down his spine as Zhuo Fan turned more and more serious. Whoosh! The whistle stopped suddenly and a pair of steps echoed. Zhuo Fan and the other 2 forgot to breathe. Their eyes were fixed towards the sound's location. But when the person came out into the open, the fatty was stunned for a second before shouting, "Teacher, how come you're here?" Long Kuei cried with joy, "Senior Fang, what brought you here?" Zhuo Fan saw the 2 recognizing the new entrant and began sizing him up. The man had a goatee and looked like he was in his 60s. He was dressed in a blue robe and had a sword strapped to his back. All this time he was smiling as the green jade flute revolved in his hand. The jade flute shocked Zhuo Fan. He remembered something and asked, "Are you one of the 5 divine dragons, the guardians of the imperial family, jade flute divine sword, Fang Qiubai?" Zhuo Fan heard Long Jiu mention that even if the imperial family could no longer control the 7 houses, they could still persevere, all thanks to the 5 divine dragons. Each was a peak radiant stage expert whom none of the 7 houses would dare mess with. Among them, there was a man known as the First Divine Sword, and he was Fang Qiubai, Jade Flute Divine Sword. He boasted himself as having united the sword and the flute as one, that his sword followed the sound and turned it into sword intent. One time, he single-handedly defeated 5 radiant stage experts with a sword strike, forcing the 7 houses to forget about testing him while also spreading his name to the 4 corners of the world. The man raised an eyebrow and watched Zhuo Fan with a profound look before nodding. With laughter, Long Jiu appeared before everyone, "Wasn't I right? This kid has sharp eyes. I only mentioned you once and he already recognized you." "Uncle Jiu." Long Kuei was overjoyed as she ran to him. "When did you and Senior Fang arrive? Why didn't you come out sooner?" "Ha ha ha, we've been here since Brother Zhuo and the 3rd prince's duel." Long Jiu turned to Zhuo Fan. "Brother Zhuo, you're quite something to keep a straight face against a dozen bone-tempering experts. When I was your age, I certainly lacked the courage you showed today. I truly admire you." Long Kuei pouted while casting a side glance towards Zhuo Fan. Seeing Zhuo Fan in action had her convinced, but admitting it was a whole nother matter. "Master, with you 2 seniors here, why didn't you act? You almost worried your student to death." Fatty clapped his fat chest. "It mattered little what happened to me, but what if Sister Kuei got hurt? Ha ha ha, and miss a good show." Fang Qiubai laughed, eyeing the calm and collected Zhuo Fan. "Moreover, I've never seen such a genius marvelous display before." Senior, you're too kind. Shuofan cupped his hands, but his face was stone cold. I'm only curious, why did Senior kill the last one? Is it? Fang Qiubai squinted and his smile turned fake as he spoke in a frosty tone. Youngster, you are exceptionally sharp, but your strength might turn this advantage into a flaw. Raising an eyebrow, Shuofan laughed and cupped his hands. Junior, thanks for Senior's lesson. Junior has already forgotten this encounter. Shuofan picked up on Fang Qiubai's warning. He did not wield enough power to poke his nose in their conflict. The man had silenced the killer to protect him. Fang Qiubai took one more long look at him and his admiration grew. You're not only smart but also know when to retreat. How rare. What a surprise, finding someone like you in the mortal world yet outside the 7 houses. If you weren't a demonic cultivator, something I am unsuited with, I would have wanted to teach you for 2 years and make your future limitless. Long Kui and Fatty were shocked. Outsiders may not know who Fang Qiubai was, but the 7 houses were crystal clear on his character. Who among the heads of the 7 houses didn't want to have their child under his tutelage? But this old man was stubborn as a mule, not giving them any attention. Even if the emperor were to request him on behalf of his sons, he'd act no differently. He'd been teaching the fatty for 3 years because Fang Qiubai appreciated his strong will, yet the fatty barely learned a few moves. But it wasn't enough to accept him as a disciple. Yet the first time he laid eyes on Shuofan, Fang Qiubai took the initiative to invite him. If the two had walked the same cultivation path, Shuofan would have been Divine Sword's first disciple. Wherever he'd go, if any 7 houses disciples saw him, they'd have to bow down to him. Long Jiu saw the 2 kids shock and surmised their thoughts with a shake of his head. These kids are yet to reach our level. So they don't know the meaning of rare find. With Shuofan's talent, any expert who saw him would want to take him as a disciple. Even if one was unrivaled in the world, to pass on his mantle he needed to find the best disciple suited for his legacy. The greater the strength of the expert, the higher the expectation. But Shuofan shook his head at this and even sneered. Forget about Fang Qiubai not accepting him because of cultivation path difference. Even if he could be accepted, he'd still refuse. As a demonic emperor, the only one worthy of him calling master was an emperor stage expert. Fang Qiubai was reluctant to let Shuofan pass by him, but, in the end, he took Fatty and left. Alongjiu, 3rd prince still has a task to complete, so I'm taking him with me. Fang Qiubai and Fatty disappeared the moment he finished. Wait, Fatty still wanted to say something to Long Kui and Shuofan, but it was too late. 1 second his anxious face was there, and the next it was gone. Zulfast. Shuofan was shocked, then he hardened his resolve. He had to reach Radiant Stage as soon as possible to guarantee his safety in his travels across the continent. Brother Shua. Long Jiu walked to Shuofan with a solemn face. Come with me to Veiled Dragon Pavilion. There's something I have for you. Smiling wryly, Shuofan nodded. He had anticipated this. 15 minutes later, Shuofan and Long Jiu were in Veiled Dragon Pavilion's meeting room, and Long Jiu pushed an unwilling Long Kui to guard the door outside. Long Jiu took out a sheepskin branded with 4 dragon marks. The first words that Shuofan recognized were Alliance Agreement. Skimming through it, a pleasing smile bloomed on his face. This was what he aimed for from the start, an alliance between Veiled Dragon Pavilion and the Luo clan. Veiled Dragon Pavilion would not only become a support for the Luo clan but would also provide resources without any conditions attached. If the agreement came into effect, he'd be worry-free from any outside attacks and would have the time to develop the Luo clan into a great power. Long Jiu was a bit astounded. Why do I feel like you knew this was coming? Shuofan smiled. It had nothing to do with predicting, but planning. Once he settled on having Veiled Dragon Pavilion as an ally, he used the ancient array diagram to entice Long Jiu, then took advantage of Veiled Dragon Pavilion in sticking its neck out for him. But that wasn't an alliance, it was just the Luo clan seeking shelter. When faced with great danger, Veiled Dragon Pavilion would have kicked them out. To avoid the worst outcome, he and Veiled Dragon Pavilion fought side by side and even killed 2 Profound Heaven elders. He risked defending the Hell Valley to show the potential of the Luo clan. His aim was an alliance agreement of equals. If he were alone, he would have avoided showing off by fighting 2 Profound Heaven experts and amass fortune instead. If Veiled Dragon Pavilion's Pavilion Lord was a man of vision, he'd choose alliance. Because he would know that the alliance offered now was like fire in winter for the Luo clan. But if offered in the future, it would be more like decoration, one among many. As such, Shuofan made a daring gambit. Gambling if the Pavilion Lord was a man of ambition who did not bother with trifles and willing to make an ally out of a fallen clan. Fortunately, he won. Of course, if he lost, then Shuofan would cross Veiled Dragon Pavilion from the list of future potential allies. just because their leader lacked the bravery and ambition of one. Zhuo Fan smiled as he rolled up the sheepskin. I will now take it to young miss for signing. Wait. Long Jiu gripped his shoulder. Sign it here and now. Zhuo Fan smiled. I'm not the clan head. Signing it as a steward will make it void. With a sly smirk, Long Jiu looked at Zhuo Fan in the eye. A pavilion lord said this agreement is not with the Luo clan, but with Zhuo Fan. Frowning, Zhuo Fan stared hard at Long Jiu. Wherever Zhuo Fan is, that place is Veiled Dragon Pavilion's ally. Long Jiu spoke. This is Pavilion Lord's intent. Zhuo Fan frowned, then smiled with a nod. Pavilion Lord Shurish ambitious, ha ha ha. In the dead of night, Zhuo Fan returned to the small courtyard and looked for Captain Pang. Old Pang, where's Missy? I'm looking for her. Sighing, Old Pang muttered, I'll take you to her. Zhuo Fan was taken aback but followed nonetheless. The two entered the kitchen and Zhuo Fan looked at Captain Pang in puzzlement when the latter pointed at Luo Yuchang. Zhuo Fan saw the chaos inside the kitchen and Luo Yuchang, who had fallen asleep next to the stove. Her face even had traces of soot. Sigh, young miss kept asking the cook for guidance from morning till late into the night. Captain Pang sighed, blaming Zhuo Fan a little. Steward Zhuo, I know of your skill and that young miss and young master do not enter your eyes. But you must know young miss worked hard day in day out for a whole month to cook for you so that you could have them when you come out of seclusion. But her efforts were not appreciated. Instead, she received your harsh criticization. Any girl would have been devastated after such a response. Ignoring Captain Pang's rant, Zhuo Fan walked next to the stove where the few dishes Luo Yunchang made laid. Compared to those at noon, these dishes were almost burned. Zhuo Fan took a bite and shook his head. She has no talent whatsoever. Sigh, even so, at least show some consideration for her work. Captain Pang rebuked as he walked next to the dishes and tried one. How hard can it be to swallow? He also took a bite and chewed it just once before spitting it right back out. You're right, Steward Zhuo, young miss is inept at cooking. Sorry for blaming you. Captain Pang wiped his mouth and walked out with a red face. But when he turned back, he saw Zhuo Fan taking one bite after another and even savoring it. Steward Zhuo, don't force yourself. Ignore what I said. Now that I've also tried young miss cooking, it's indeed. Captain Pang's mouth clamped shut and his face twisted. I'm just a bit hungry. Zhuo Fan smiled as he ate everything. In the morning, a ray of sunshine entered the small courtyard's kitchen. Luo Yunchang's eyelids trembled as she opened her drowsy eyes. She looked around the kitchen and smiled dejectedly. Last night, she was so tired after cooking that she fell asleep in the kitchen itself. Even if anyone caught wind of this, no one would believe it. A chi condensation cultivator tiring herself out from cooking? But the truth was she was too fatigued that she would rather pick cultivation instead of cooking. Just as she was getting up, she froze. Someone had put a plain cover on her and her back wasn't leaning on the hard stove but on something soft instead. Pursing her lips, she turned her head only to see a sleeping Zhuo Fan leaning on her. And what kept her back soft was his arm. Luo Yunchang was about to yelp but she covered her mouth. It never crossed her mind that Zhuo Fan would spend the night with her here. Blushing, Luo Yunchang observed his face and wanted to take advantage of this opportunity. Young Miss' red lips were inching ever closer to his face. Steward Zhuo, young miss. A sudden rough shout came from Captain Pang. Zhuo Fan's eyelids trembled and were about to open. Luo Yunchang immediately laid her head back on his shoulder and faked sleeping without budging. Just that her red face betrayed her as if she'd done something she shouldn't. Zhuo Fan opened his eyes, took a deep breath, and frowned when he saw Captain Pang coming in. Old Pang, what's the rush? Brother Zhuo, young miss. Captain Pang pointed at Luo Yunchang with shock. Zhuo Fan turned to see Luo Yunchang's red and shivering face. He touched her forehead. It's burning up. Did she catch a cold? Shaking his head, Zhuo Fan blamed himself. Last night, he wanted to take Luo Yunchang back to her room, but afraid of waking her up, he chose to watch over her in the kitchen. He didn't think sleep would cast its spell on him too. Old Pang, say what you came to say. Meanwhile, I'll take this missy back to her room. Zhuo Fan carried Luo Yunchang, but Old Pang was panicking. You can't, Brother Zhuo. Someone wants to invite young miss for a chat. Someone we can't offend. What can't offend? She won't be going even if the Veiled Dragon Pavilion asked. Zhuo Fan snapped. Can't you see she has lost consciousness? She must be sick. Wait for a bit and I'll go see the guest. Sigh, Brother Zhuo, Steward Zhuo, young miss must go meet him in person. He bears the Imperial Golden Seal. Captain Pang shouted. Zhuo Fan stopped. Only the Imperial family's guards had the seal. Even the 7 houses leaders would have to respond at once or they'd have committed a grave crime. The lightest punishment was death, while the harshest was dragging one's whole clan with him. Of course, with the 7 noble houses' power, the imperial family would refrain from resorting to such methods. But that didn't apply to a fallen clan like them. Zhuo Fan squinted and thought it through. Old Pang, tell him young miss is unwell, and that he should come back tomorrow. What? Captain Pang's heart jumped in fright. That person carries the emperor's edict. If you do this, it is the same as saying you don't want to talk to him. But Zhuo Fan had it thought out. Thinking back to last night, he guessed the one calling him over was that fatty's guard. The fatty was a good man and wouldn't let emotions cloud his judgment, slaughtering innocents left and right. Do what I said, now. Zhuo Fan raised his voice. Wait! Luo Yunchang yelled, struggling out of Zhuo Fan's embrace, and spoke with a stern face. Captain Pang, tell him to wait a moment to make myself presentable. Understood. Captain Pang bowed and secretly rejoiced. Thank God, young miss woke up, or who knew how much trouble Brother Zhuo's arrangement would have stirred up. But this steward Zhuo sure is dauntless. If I were to follow his words, I'll die of fright. Captain Pang shook his head and left. Zhuo Fan watched Luo Yunchang skeptically. How did she regain consciousness all of a sudden? Luo Yunchang rolled her eyes. Why are you so reckless? Is the imperial family someone you can offend? To avoid him noticing anything, Luo Yunchang rushed away. Zhuo Fan was left to walk alone to the living room with doubt in his heart. He met with the man carrying the seal, a peak chi condensation cultivator. He was one of the porters to Fatty's palanquin. Are you Steward Zhuo? My master is inviting you and young Miss Luo for a talk. The envoy cupped his hands, but the prideful attitude never left him. And either on purpose or otherwise, the imperial golden seal flashed on his waist. Perhaps he was afraid they'd mistake him for someone other than the imperial family's guard. Zhuo Fan snorted. You're still soft thinking you can fake your arrogance around me. When I was faking it, you were still but an egg in your mother's belly. Zhuo Fan didn't even look at him as he slumped in a chair, one leg over the other. The envoy's eyes swelled with rage. Is the fatty's injury healed? Zhuo Fan asked in passing. Fatty? The man was stunned. Then it hit him that Zhuo Fan was calling his master fatty. But the number of people in this world who dared to call him that was less than 10. Then he and master are? His heart started beating a mile a minute and the arrogance was gone from his eyes. My master did not mention any injury when he returned last night. Is that so? Zhuo Fan raised an eyebrow then laughed. He must be thinking of his image. I punched him 30-odd times yesterday and kicked him a dozen times more. There's no way he's fine. Don't you think so too? That fatty must be faking it so you guys won't laugh at him, ha ha ha. Zhuo Fan quirked his eyebrows at the man. The envoy's lips twitched, unable to respond. But he was embarrassed nonetheless. Right, was that old goat Fang Qiubai still angry after he arrived? Zhuo Fan looked at him carefully this time. But the envoy just shook his head. Fang Qiubai returned with his master yesterday and only then did they find out about Fang Qiubai's arrival. Since Zhuo Fan knew this before them, it spoke how close he was with his master. At this point, the envoy stashed the seal in his pants. It worked well in scaring some, but it was best to not make a fool of himself in front of such a young master like Zhuo Fan. Great! Seeing the envoy shaking his head, Zhuo Fan rejoiced. Perhaps you don't know, but that old goat wanted to take me as a disciple. If not for my staunch heart and me choosing death over kneeling, the old goat would have taken me away by now. I still thought he was angry and was going to come nag me again. Now that I know he isn't, I can rest easy. That old goat understands my predicament. What? Fang Qiubai wanted to take you as a disciple. The man shouted as his legs went soft and collapsed. Heavens! Who the hell is this young master? He is a friend that beat up master and also someone wanted as a disciple by Jade Flute Divine Sword Fang Qiubai, who the emperor shows respect to. Zhuo Fan secretly sneered. Oh, what's wrong? Why fall over? Let me help you. Zhuo Fan said so but showed no intention of moving. The envoy was sharp enough to get back on his feet while waving his hand. No need, Steward Zhuo, I don't dare ask you of such a favor. I am not worthy. Humph, a servant's instinct. Zhuo Fan disdained. You call helping you get up a favor? Might you be the emperor's envoy? Luo Yunchang, dressed to impress, walked before him and bowed. The envoy rushed to kowtow. You are making it hard on me. Please don't be so courteous. If master heard I was disrespectful to his friends, he will punish me. Luo Yunchang was at a loss and turned to Zhuo Fan, who just shrugged. But Captain Pang, who was behind her, was stunned silly at the sight of the envoy's courteous attitude. Where's your previous haughty attitude? Spouting something like if young miss didn't come to see you in 15 minutes, you'd be executing all of us. Why the sudden change of tones? But even this change was too outrageous and polite. Captain Pang eyed Zhuo Fan, who only sported a puzzling smile. Old Pang figured Steward Zhuo had something to do with it and gave him a thumbs up. Only Steward Zhuo can make an imperial family's guard kowtow to our young miss. Zhuo Fan dismissed the envoy's courtesy. Why is that fatty calling me? I do not know. I was only ordered to invite Wingay City's Kai clan, Lei clan and Luo clan. The envoy spoke with extreme politeness. Zhuo Fan squinted. It seems that the Hell Valley targeting the 3 clans must have something to do with the imperial family. In a peaceful location within the forest, a kilometer from Wingay City, stood a remote courtyard. The 4 guards posted at the door were bone-tempering experts. Zhuo Fan and Luo Yunchang came along with Luo Yunhai and Captain Pang with the envoy as their guide. Steward Zhuo, young Miss Luo, please enter. The man was very polite. He opened the door, stood to the side and bowed for them to pass. The other guards frowned with doubt and a flicker of scorn in their eyes. They were imperial family's guards, always welcomed with bows and courtesy everywhere. But this guy went to invite some no-name clan heads and even bowed down before them. He was seen as a disgrace by his fellow guards. The men picked up on scorn, but he just smirked. How can idiots know the importance these people hold? Steward Zhuo is Master's friend, who even Senior Fang Qiubai has his eyes on. He needs to say just one word and he'd be Fang Qiubai's disciple. Even the emperor will have to show respect then. As for the other 3, they're Steward Zhuo's friends. We can't show any disrespect even to them. Secretly snorting, the envoy still showed a flattering smile as he guided them inside. They soon arrived at a garden. A single pavilion laid in the middle with a stone table inside. Fatty sat in the seat of honor and behind him stood Jade Flute Divine Sword Fang Qiubai. On one side of the fatty was Lei Yintian with Lei Yuding and Xiao Chui behind him. On the other it was Kai Rong and his son Kai shouting. There were 2 additional empty stools around the table for Zhuo Fan and Luo Yunchang. This must be a meeting of the 3 clan heads. Zhuo Fan rubbed his nose and took a step back, letting Luo Yunhai take the lead. Bro Zhuo. Luo Yunhai didn't understand, while Zhuo Fan smiled. Show them the dignity of a clan head and don't let them look down on you. Luo Yunhai understood as Luo Yunchang showed a grateful look. It was clear this meeting was between the 3 clan heads and the imperial family. But after the events over the past few months, all of Wingay City knew that Luo clan's true clan head was Zhuo Fan. Even the imperial family might be considering Zhuo Fan as the master of the Luo clan. Zhuo Fan did this now so that he did not exceed his authority and was letting Luo clan come into the light. He wanted to state the fact Luo clan's clan head was still named Luo. Please come in. The envoy saw the 3rd prince and bowed 90 degrees towards Zhuo Fan in a show of respect he had for his master's friend. But this had a different effect on everyone. The fatty was stunned. Since when were the imperial family's guards so humble? Kai clan and Lei clan were of the same opinion. When this guard came to invite them, he was brazen, cocky and flaunting, not caring in the least who he was talking to. But towards the Luo clan he treated them like guests. The 2 clans felt apprehensive in their hearts. They were even more envious. They were all clans of Wingay City, yet the treatment was worlds apart. Only Fang Qiubai smiled, guessing Zhuo Fan might have twisted facts to scare the envoy. But this only worked to admire him more. Under the envoy's polite call, the Luo clan stepped into the pavilion. Luo Yunchang greeted the fatty. I am Luo Yunchang, greetings, your highness. On the way here, the envoy told them of his master. The others followed Luo Yunchang in showing respect. But Zhuo Fan just shrugged. The fatty only waved, not taking Zhuo Fan's disrespect seriously. Please sit. Luo Yunchang and her brother took a seat, while Zhuo Fan and Captain Pang stood behind them. Fatty threw a long look towards Zhuo Fan, secretly nodding. Great authority, but without any arrogance. He is a loyal subject. Fang Qiubai smiled with praise in his eyes. Zhuo Fan's conduct was etched in the 2's hearts. Wielding his martial prowess to protect his master and courteous enough to defend his master's honor. In the eyes of the imperial family, he was a rare and valuable official. The fatty began, I have invited the 3 clan heads today per the imperial edict to reveal to you the 1,000-years-old relationship between the 3 clans. Everyone was focused on Fatty's next words. The 3 clan heads must have each received an instruction from the previous clan head to not make an enemy out of each other, and perhaps even mentioned about helping one another. Fatty stood up. Moreover, the 3 clans' power must never leave Wingay City until the pearls shine. Kai Rong and Lei Yintian watched the fatty in puzzlement. Luo Yunchang got a nod from her brother and also looked puzzled. Ha ha ha, in fact, this is an agreement between the founding imperial family 1,000 years ago and the 3 clan heads of that time, known as Secret Pearl Order. Fatty smiled and his eyes flashed. Kai clan, Luo clan, Lei clan and the 7 noble houses are the same. They are all loyal officials, founders of the empire. What? Like a bomb was thrown on them, the 3 clans' representatives were shell-shocked. They never thought that their origins were the same as the 7 houses. But why had they fallen so low that they could only stay in Wengay City as mortal clans? The fatty turned a bit bashful, guessing their thoughts. Sorry, this is what our human clan owes you. Sighing, Fatty continued, at that time, Tianyu Empire was just established and was shaky, with unrest among its people. The great ancestor and founder sent his 7 ministers across the kingdom to employ autonomous administration and settle the land. This gave them enough power to make them equal to the imperial family. They later became the 7 noble houses. In just 20 years, the 7 houses grew exponentially, and their greed ignited a war among them. The imperial family could no longer keep them in check and had to employ schemes in weakening them. The 7 houses were ultimately aware that there will be no winners in their war and ceased fire. But the aftermath was cruel. The people were suffering, the empire was mourning, and it was just one step away from collapsing. But how is this connected to us? Zhuofan frowned. Taking a deep breath, Fatty straightened his back. Everyone, to be honest, your clans are founders of our empire. If your elders were still sitting in the imperial court, they would be no less famous than the 4 pillars. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. 4 pillars were the support of the Tianyu Empire, leading the military, economy, politics, external affairs. They were the only ones capable of resisting the 7 houses. There was a rumor the 4 pillars' power was so strong it struck fear in the imperial family. Imperial family, 4 pillars and the 7 noble houses represented the empire's highest power, but also restricting each other in a delicate balance. If one side tips, the balance would crumble and the empire would fall. No one could believe that their ancestors were so amazing and capable of becoming the empire's 4 pillars of today. The fatty lost his smile at this point. The great ancestor at the time set up the Secret Pearl Order with your ancestors to prevent another war from breaking out among the 7 houses. The emperor used all kinds of excuses to demote your ancestors to Wengay City and become common clans. But the imperial family could, at any time, combine the 3 clans into a great clan equal to the rank of the 7 houses. This would occur only when war broke out again between the 7 houses. Then this new clan would add balance to the equation, to save as many lives as possible. But, even if an 8th house were to appear, it cannot stop the 7 houses. Luo Yunchang voiced her doubts. Zhuofan cut Fatty off with a smile before he could speak. Young miss, the 8th house's purpose isn't to stop them but to add balance. A war breaks out only when one side has absolute confidence in winning it. But a war in which winning was possible at a heavy cost won't happen unless the 2 sides hated each other to the bone. Sometimes when 2 powers starts a conflict, it is very easily solved, since no one wants to suffer irreparable damages. Luo Yunchang nodded and the fatty praised Zhuofan. Steward Zhuo is amazing. Luo clan will rise for sure in your capable hands. Hairong's lips twitched from the regret he felt. If he hadn't offended Zhuofan, he might have been able to rope him. This kid was a genius seen once in 1,000 years. Their prince, we know of the relationship between the 3 clans. What I want to know is how are you going to secure our rise to the 8th seat? Zhuofan stared at the fatty. Raising his brow, the fatty nodded in admiration. That's Steward Zhuo for you, hitting the nail on the head. Of course, the imperial family's power is enough to make a clan rise in a short time. The hard part though is how to keep it hidden. Zhuofan smiled. You think the 7 houses would just watch us rise up to their level? Hairong and Lei Yintian's backs went cold with sweat. They were elated that their ancestors had been imperial court officials. They were thinking, my clan will receive the imperial family's support to rise above a common clan. But Zhuofan brought them down to earth. Not to mention growing stronger, the 7 houses wouldn't even let the new clan grow to their level. They would be destroyed while they were at their weakest. Hairong and Lei Yintian were grateful for Zhuofan's reminder. The imperial family wanted the 7 houses' power and balance, but the 3 of them wanted to survive. Hairong had to admire Zhuofan's prudent mind. After muttering under his breath for a while, the fatty spoke. This was settled at the moment the secret order was given. What is a clan's foundation? Spirit stones, pills? No, these are support items. Strength is the best guarantee of a powerful clan. Veiled Dragon Pavilion has its 9 outstanding elders. Hell Valley has its 12 elders as overseers. Each of the 7 houses has its own strength. Also, every one of them has invited a venerable, along with other secret weapons they're holding. Even we, the imperial family, don't dare stir them. Fatty's eyes then shined like a radiant sun. At the time, in order to paralyze the 7 houses, Great Ancestor confiscated the wealth of your clans. This is why none of you has any decent cultivation method and martial arts. It was also because of this reason the 7 houses withdrew their surveillance on you 500 years ago. Yet none of them would have thought that you all are still holding a low profound ranked martial art. Fatty showed a sneaky smile. With this martial art all of you can become strong. Even the 7 houses only have 1 or 2 profound ranked martial arts. The 3 clans were amazed. When did they have such a martial art? If they had it, they'd have used it to grow strong by now. Only Zhuofan's eyes rolled about, recalling something. With a vague smile, Fatty's hand flashed and revealed a green jade slip. This is a low mortal ranked martial art, combining art. By itself, it holds no value. But if you use it along with your clan's spirit ranked martial arts you inherited, you can combine them into a single martial art of the profound rank. In other words, Luo clan's returning Dragon Palm, Kai clan's Wind Kick, and Lei clan's Lightning Finger were originally one single martial art that the imperial family split among the 3 clans. And only the imperial family knew the way to restore it. Zhuofan squinted. Fatty was shocked but then nodded. Steward Zhuo is wise. There aren't many martial arts which are capable of splitting other martial arts, and the number of martial arts that can restore them are even lesser. I didn't think Steward Zhuo would know of this. If Imperial Father hadn't mentioned it, I would have never found out. Zhuofan just smiled. Perhaps because the splitting martial arts were uncommon even at the mortal rank, each sect in the sacred domain seized them. They split their core martial arts to prevent degenerate disciples from spreading it. Only the sect leader's disciple had the right to learn the entire set of martial arts. Zhuofan turned to look at Kai clan and Lei clan. They were startled, but their eyes showed deep regret. Perhaps because they were negligent in safeguarding their inherited martial arts and let the Hell Valley steal them. Especially with regards to Kai clan, who were quick to give it away. It must be really eating Kai Rong inside right now. Clan heads, please take out your inherited martial arts. Fatty placed the jade slip on the table with a smile. But only Luo Yunchang took out her clan's martial art. After Lei Yuding got to know of Yang Ming's treachery, she gave back the returning Dragon Palm to Luo Yunchang. But the other clan heads looked at each other in shame. Fatty frowned as he stared at them. Sighing, Lei Yuntian cupped his hands. Your Highness, I was unable to protect my ancestors' martial art from Hell Valley's thieving hands. I accept your Highness' punishment. What? Fatty slapped the table. Kai Rong also cupped his hands. Your Highness. I am the same. Fatty's body shivered in rage. Oh, why you? Just how are you both clan heads? Have you forgotten your ancestors' instructions? You should have defended it with your lives. The 2 kneeled. Please forgive us, Your Highness. Fatty sighed as he scratched his head. Kai Rong peeked at him. Your Highness, can't the imperial family bestow us another profound ranked martial art? Bestow your mom. Fatty couldn't hold it in and began raining curses and spitting all over Kai Rong's kneeling figure. Oh, what do you take profound ranked martial arts for, cabbage? Even the imperial family has only 4 of them. And they're each registered. If I take one out, everyone will know. How are your clans gonna rise then? You dumb pig, are you tired of living? Fatty gave Kai Rong a round of slapping then stomped his feet. Kai Rong curled up and shivered on the ground. What now, what now? The secret pearl order is ruined. Fatty paced around. Zhuofan smirked and 2 jade slips appeared with a flash in his hand. Third prince, there's no need to worry. I have their clan's martial arts. What? The 2 clan heads shouted in unison, staring dumbfounded in Zhuofan's direction. Kai Rong in particular, having not witnessed Zhuofan's prowess, was incredulous at what was happening. Lei Yuntian gave Zhuofan a thankful nod. If not for him, not only Lei clan wouldn't recover, they'd even be executed in a fit of anger by third prince. Ah, stawardzu, e outro liunio del zamirad zarab zamazing. I see why Elder Joe of Veiled Dragon Pavilion speaks so highly of you. Fatty was overjoyed, and ran into Zhuofan for a bear hug. If not for you, I would have failed Imperial Father's task. I owe you one. Smiling, Zhuofan shook his head. This is all for the Luo clan. Yes, right, for the Luo clan and for me, ha ha ha. Fatty slapped Zhuofan's shoulder, then gathered the 4 jade slips. Now that we have the martial arts, next is the merger of the 3 clans. According to the Great Ancestor's secret pearl order, Two clans are to merge with the strongest, and the profound rank martial art will be in the clan head's care. As such, Your Highness, Akairong seemed hyped as he jumped to his feet. Luo clan has little strength and only 4 members, and Lei clan is on the verge of collapse. Only my Kai clan is flourishing. As such, I will begrudgingly accept this responsibility and support them under my clan's wing. As of now, I will take Lei and Luo clan as Kai clan's disciples and assist the imperial family in fulfilling the secret edict. As he finished speaking, Kai Rong reached for the jade slips, but a rough hand stopped him. Lei Yuntian glared at him as he asked, Kai Rong, how can a bone-tempering cultivator be enough to act as clan head? Humph, so what? Based on strength, my clan is the best. Kai Rong raised his brows. Don't be so sure. Lei Yuntian sneered at Kai Rong and looked at Lei Yunting. She showed a proud smile and stepped forward. Clan head Kai, in this last month, I gathered all the scattered Blackwind Mountains men. We have 600 men, half of them are in chi condensation. Based on strength alone, the Kai clan is weaker. Ha ha ha, so what if you're strong? You're just bandits. Kai shouting laughed at her. Lei clan is but a rabble of thugs. If you take the role of clan head, we'll only be the 7 houses laughingstock. Never will we be able to reach their level. Who are you calling a thug? You want a piece of me. You say you're not, thug granny. In an instant, the Lei and Kai clans started fighting for the leader's position. Zhuo Fan was secretly sneering at the side. This new clan is just being established and it was still a question if it could survive. Yet these bunch of idiots are plagued with delusions of grandeur that they could hold their own against the 7 houses. Fatty and Feng Qiubai mocked the quarreling clans with their eyes. Luo Yanchang's face burned in anger. They were fighting against each other while ignoring the Luo clan. It clearly showed that they thought little of her clan. Although they were but 4 members, they were still one of the 3 clans in the edict. But these clans didn't even ask for their opinion. Bam! With that loud slap, the 2 clans stopped and turned to see the brat Luo Yunhai hitting the table. His face was stern and his eyes were steadfast, unlike his usual childish self. Even Zhuo Fan quirked an eyebrow. Why all this fuss? Luo Yunhai swept the people with his eyes and spoke with resolve. In this merger of clans, the only one worthy of the leader position is none other than my Luo clan. Luo Yunhai's declaration shocked them silly. Kai shouting mocked, oh, what does a brat know? You're the weakest of us, nothing of worth at all. What gives you the right to lead us? Sneering, Luo Yunhai grinned. Everyone there recognized his look, the spitting image of someone they all knew very well. This made them turn their eyes to Zhuo Fan. Hell, Zhuo Fan ruined him. Zhuo Fan was quite piqued by this brat. Luo clan has no men, money, or pills. It only has us 4 masters and servants. Luo Yunhai looked at them with sparkling eyes, but our clan is the strongest because we have Steward Chua. Luo Yunhai turned to Zhuo Fan with worship in his gaze. If Luo clan was to have any right to become the head, it would all be thanks to Zhuo Fan. His skills were obvious to anyone there. Even Veiled Dragon Pavilion was certain that if Zhuo Fan stayed with Luo clan, its rise was but a matter of time. Under the hopeful and worried gazes, especially Luo Yunhai's expectant look, Zhuo Fan shook his head. This kid hardly ever shows such great expectations from me. I can't disappoint him now, can I? Humph, Zhuo Fan is a mere steward. How can a person of low status like him be worthy to hold on to all our Kai clan's guards and wealth? Punk, our clan shall be the head, don't. Kai shouting mocked but didn't finish as Zhuo Fan slapped the table, revealing the alliance agreement. Under the puzzlement of others, Zhuo Fan sneered, this is Luo clan and Veiled Dragon Pavilion's alliance contract. What? The fatty was so shocked his whole body trembled and was close to falling off his chair. Even the relaxed and uncaring Feng Qiubai behind him narrowed his eyes as he scanned the sheepskin with shock. Veiled Dragon Pavilion was one of the 7 noble houses. The only ones worthy of signing an alliance agreement with them were others from the 7 houses, while the rest only had the right to sign a subsidiary agreement. But now, with a deep look, Feng Qiubai sighed as he asked Zhuo Fan, a kid, how did you do it? Recognized and valued as a hero. He nodded towards Feng Qiubai, then turned to the 2 clans and spoke in a cold tone. Let me tell you, even if this crappy secret pearl order never existed, as long as I'm here, Luo clan will ultimately rise to the ranks of the 7 houses. You're of no help to us. On the contrary, you are a burden. Zhuo Fan sneered. The 2 other clans lost their voices in shock. With rosy cheeks, Luo Yunchang raised her chin proudly. Luo Yunhai was grinning from excitement, watching Zhuo Fan with veneration. Mulling over, the fatty traced his hand on the alliance agreement. He found Zhuofan's strength exceeding his expectations, as it was not a simple matter to gain such an alliance agreement. Even if Longjia was in favor of him, an elder didn't hold much sway in the Veiled Dragon Pavilion. Fatty sighed. Steward Chua, I am saddened by seeing you live in such a poor clan. Why don't you come help me? Just think about it. To the shock of everyone present, the third prince expressed his intention in recruiting Zhuofan. It amazed them that Zhuofan was so highly sought after that even the imperial family was willing to have him. Luo Yunchang stood up nervously, thinking Zhuofan would be snatched away. Zhuofan smiled and shook his head. Third prince, you're overestimating me. Even in the Luo clan, am I not doing my best for the imperial family? Fatty quirked an eyebrow and smiled. All right. I'll leave it at that. He then turned to the rest. It's decided. The Luo clan will be the leader of the three clans merger. Kai and Lei clans are to assist the Luo clan in fulfilling the secret pearl order. Your Highness. Kai Shouting was disgruntled and wanted to voice his objection, but Chiron gripped his arm. He didn't understand the reason, but Fatty's pin-sized eyes left him shivering from the killing intent. Secret Pearl Order was a millennium-old secret plan, and it held great importance to the imperial family. It was understandable that they would only choose the best clan for the position of leader. If the three clans were equal, the imperial family would have taken his objection into consideration. But Zhuofan took out the alliance agreement, making all dissent moot. It turned the Luo clan into the best choice in implementing the secret edict for the imperial family. If even with this, the other clans voiced their discontent, the imperial family would deal them with a heavy hand. Just as Zhuofan said, the Luo clan had all the power it needed to bring the secret edict to fruition. This, in turn, made the other two clans their vassals. If they felt that being a vassal was unpleasant, the imperial family would finish them off with a mere swipe. Kai Shouting let the matter drop, yet the discontent never left his face. He could only follow Chiron's actions in submitting. Fatty nodded, then turned to Lei Yuntian to see if he had objections. The old man said, Your Highness, be at ease. I will give my all in assisting Yunhai and Yunchang. As Cloud Manor fell because of me, I will become a servant to atone for my crimes. Fatty nodded at his sincerity. Good, since there are no objections, the three clans shall unite. Understood. Everyone bowed. We shall now withdraw. Steward should stay for a while. Zhuofan was unclear as to the reason why, but remained nonetheless under the departing and curious gazes of the rest. The fatty let out a breath, then rushed to Zhuofan and dragged him to an empty place in the garden. Third prince, Zhuofan frowned. Fatty waved, just follow my lead. Fatty then pointed two fingers at the sky as he shouted, I, Tianyu Empire's third prince, Yuan Tsung, vow to heaven to become sworn brother with Luo clan steward, Zhuofan. To share life and death together and never betray him. Your turn. Fatty watched Zhuofan impatiently. Zhuofan was confused, but becoming sworn brothers with third prince had to be a good thing, so he went along. I, Luo clan steward, Zhuofan, vow to heaven to become sworn brother with Tianyu Empire's third prince, Yuan Kong. If he doesn't betray me, I won't either. Fatty muttered when he heard the last part, Brother, you sure are meticulous. Fatty, it's not that I don't trust you, but the pugilistic world is too vicious. Zhuofan shrugged, not having any restraint in calling him Fatty. Since no one was here, the Fatty himself wouldn't blow a gasket over this. Plus, this kid needs me to complete the secret edict. Zhuofan was perfectly clear when to be fierce and when to be scared. Just as he foresaw, the Fatty nodded instead of getting angry. Call me how you like it. I feel much better since we are sworn brothers now. Zhuofan looked at him in puzzlement. Fatty sighed. Do you remember our bet from yesterday? The winner gets to have Sister Kue. I lost the bet, but I still can't let it go. So I decided to become sworn brothers with you. This way I won't go after my brother's wife, and it would help me forget about Sister Kue too. Zhuofan rose an eyebrow, incredulous that the Fatty wanted to become sworn brothers over this. A Fatty, there's nothing between me and that girl. She was just making excuses. What, is that true? Fatty even jumped 10 meters in joy. Then can I still chase her? Nodding, Zhuofan showed a vague smile. Go, go, annoy the little lass to death. Awesome, brother. You are indeed my sworn brother, ha ha ha. A Fatty was skipping and whooping in joy. Now that the bet was off, he could chase Long Kue to his heart's content. Zhuofan smiled. Fatty, what does the secret pearl order truly say? The Fatty dropped his smile, watching Zhuofan with embarrassment. Brother, didn't I say it already? This plan is very delicate, and even the goal is fair, but Zhuofan squinted. It lacks ambition. So much so that an emperor of a founding empire would never come up with it. The great ancestor showed great ambition when he established the empire. Zhuo Fan wasn't gullible enough to believe the secret millennium order was limited to restricting the 7 houses and maintaining a balance of power. Fatty shook his head, I do not know either. This was what I've been told. Zhuo Fan stared him down but discovered nothing else. Maybe he knew nothing, or maybe his acting was top-notch. Then how did Hell Valley catch wind of this 1,000-year-old secret edict? Zhuo Fan smiled. All of Hell Valley's actions were against the secret edict while looking innocent doing it. They were afraid of the imperial family's investigation. Fatty frowned. Reason points to the contrary, but there are many spies in the imperial capital. The information about secret edict might have leaked. It remained hidden for 1,000 years and only now it gets leaked? Zhuo Fan frowned. Maybe leaking it is part of the secret edict's contents. The fatty shivered and went wide-eyed. Zhuo Fan smirked. It's clear now. Never mind, it works in Luo clan's benefit anyway. So there's no need to poke my nose in it. There's no need to worry over nothing, ha ha ha. Zhuo Fan waved as he left. Fatty, I'll be going. We'll meet again if we get the chance. A voice rang in Fatty's ear as Zhuo Fan's figure distanced. This kid is perhaps too sharp, scary even. Whoosh! It was Fang Qiubai in his blue robe. Fang Qiubai muttered, the more I watch him the more he resembles someone. Who? Fatty asked. Fang Qiubai's eyes flashed. Is Zhuge Changfeng. The leader of 4 pillars, Prime Minister Zhuge Changfeng? Fatty was in shock. Are you saying Zhuo Fan? Nodding, Fang Qiubai smiled. Songa, becoming sworn brothers with him was the best decision you made in your life. One day, he will become one of your 4 pillars, helping you rule. The fatty was stunned, watching Zhuo Fan getting further away as ambition flickered in his eyes. Zhuo Fan returned to the small courtyard and saw the others waiting outside. What's wrong? Did Third Prince say something? Luo Yunchang was worried. He refused Veiled Dragon Pavilion's invitation, but this was the imperial family. With just a nod, he could become an official with the support of the imperial family. Secretly smiling, Zhuo Fan said, Fatty told me to do my best in fulfilling the secret edict. Luo Yunchang covered Zhuo Fan's mouth then looked around before saying, how can you call Third Prince like that? Be careful or he might take your life. He won't. He still needs me. Zhuo Fan dismissed her worry and even gave a thumbs up to Luo Yunhai. Your performance was perfect, worthy of a clan head. You made me proud. Please, didn't I learn it all from bro? Luo Yunhai stuck up his chin. It was clear the bro he referred to was Zhuo Fan. Everyone laughed and Luo Yunchang showed a relieved smile. Dad, can you see? Yunhai has grown up. He can shoulder the honor and glory of the Luo clan. Luo Yunchang looked at the sky with sparkling eyes. On the second day after the meeting, the new clan was established with Luo clan at the helm. The name was of course Luo clan. Zhuo Fan, with the imperial family's support, had no trouble becoming the head steward of the clan, handling all affairs. He appointed Lei Yintian as Luo clan's grand elder and Kai Rong as the second elder while keeping Old Pang as the captain of the guards, leading the Kai clan's guards. Lei Yuding was made the leader of the Shadow Corps, taking Blackwind Mountain's bandits under her and in charge of intelligence gathering and training assassins. Because of the imperial family's decree, the Veiled Dragon Pavilion and Hell Valley were banned from entering the Wingay city. The rest of the 7 houses remained within their borders, thus making the city belong to the Luo clan alone. As for the Luo clan's estate, Kai clan suggested for it to be the former Kai Manor, but Zhuo Fan had other plans. Blackwind Mountain, the place where a natural array took form. And so, another Devil Mountain was established, and Zhuo Fan's plans advanced one step at a time.